Hi, welcome to LAMC 2022. The last 2 years have been surreal. March 10th, 2020, everything looked great. And 3 days later, the world shut down. 2 years later, and after a few stop starts, it looks like we're going back to the future once again. Last year, Latin artists were the first to announce their tours while the pandemic was subsiding. And now, a few months into 2022, it's all systems go, at least here in the USA. Where are we headed? And how are we going to navigate this new normal? Our guest panelists are going to shed some light, give us some insights, and hopefully answer the should I stay or should I go on tour answer. I'm going to introduce our panelists and say a little about them and then let them take it away. I'm going to do it alphabetically. And my first guest is Gil Gastelum. Gil has been in the music business since 1989, when he founded an indie record shop near the University of Arizona campus in his hometown of Tucson, Arizona. Gil created the boutique music management and record company Cosmica Artists. Cosmica has represented artists such as Carla Morrison, Gaby Moreno, the Marias, Lila Downs, and a few select others. Gil's role at Cosmica has been that of a marketer, a manager, head of label services, publisher, and founder of the company. His philosophy as it pertains to his artists is go where the love is, utilize the innovation of imagination, and with that, you can blaze your own path. Hans Schafer is the Senior VP of Latin Touring at Live Nation. Prior to Live Nation, Hans served as Director of Latin Talent for AEG Live, where he led the efforts on the company's Latin business, overseeing the department's national booking strategy and marketing teams. Prior to joining AEG Live, he was the Director of Brand Partnerships for Universal Music Latin Entertainment, where he led brand partnerships for the label's artists and leveraged his expansive knowledge as a leader in the music industry to proactively work with brands and agencies to develop fully integrated partnerships that greatly benefited both the artist and the brand partners. Michel Vega is, hello, Michel. Michel co-founded Magnus Media in partnership with Mark Anthony and currently serves as its Chief Executive Officer. In this role, Michel oversees all operating units of the diversified entertainment and sports enterprise, which include an artist and athlete management division, a recording label, music publishing company, talent agency, television and digital content studio, and an entertainment-centric marketing practice. Prior to Magnus, for 15 years, Michel was the head of Latin music at William Morris, one of the world's largest talent agencies, and he worked with such high valuable clients as Alejandro Sanz, J Balvin, Juan Luis Guerra, Juanes, Luis Miguel, Pepe Aguilar, Pitbull, Nicole, and Prince Royce, among many others. So with that and that intro, I'd like to start asking the question of our three panelists. And maybe since you were last, Michel, maybe you start. Touring is back at pre-pandemic levels now, but there are still a lot of variables at play. Omicron has not fully gone away in the US or worldwide. There's a war raging in the Ukraine. There's inflation, gas prices are through the roof. How is this all affecting your business?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to LAMC for inviting me, and also thank you to my fellow panelists. It's really great to be on with all of you. That the answer to that question in my mind is a work in progress always. One thing that we've all learned is that there's really no normal, and once you start to feel like you're getting back on track, boom, you get hit with something else. I remember there was a moment last year where after we had gotten used to COVID rescheduling, all of a sudden we were dealing with weather rescheduling because of either wildfires on the west coast of the US or storms in the Northeast. And, now we have wars in Europe. So I think, at least from my point of view, there is no going back to the normal, and we all have to get used to the new normal, which means to me that you have to be ready to roll with the punches as they come. you can't be as comfortable as you used to be. And these are exciting times. We started coming back from all of this, at least the COVID part of it, more or less in August of last year in the US. And we had a number of tours out that did well. The good news about all this is, you know, all the indications are that people want to go to shows. So that's good news. Latin America has not totally come back yet. There are some, you know, some markets that have reopened. There are some markets that remain closed, some that reopened and then closed again when Omicron and Delta came up. Europe has had really fits and starts and hasn't opened up significantly. We're all hoping that we get the summer touring season of the festivals, which begins in June. And it's been postponed for 2 years. So hopefully we'll be okay in Europe. But obviously now we have a war there. So, you know, I wish I had the answer to your question, Bruno. I don't. But all I can tell you is have a plan B, have a plan C, and have a plan D in everything that you do. And that's the only way I think we're going to make it through all of this.
That's very
definitely say that.
Hans,
You know, if I don't mind saying to hopefully to expand what Michel just said, is that you definitely, like, for those of you that are putting budgets together for your tours, that make sure you have that extra padding, because, you know, it's going to be really important, especially as gas prices go up, as you were saying, Bruno, like inflation is definitely affecting what you're, like, if you're even a van or a bus. I've had to deal with both on recent tours that are being planned right now, and what we had budgeted to what was the actuality of it, completely different planets at this point because of inflation. So you gotta be prepared for, you know, that extra padding in your budgets.
Hans, how is this new normal affecting your business?
Well, I think to expand on what Michel was saying is we've always been a flexible industry, right? We've always been a nimble industry in terms of needing always to have experts within the company responding to different scenarios that may arise for a bus shutting down or fires happening. You have to be nimble and flexible and moving things around. I think one thing that we've done is, obviously, we consistently learn. We have a lot of experts inside the company that allow us to move and navigate through any of the current situations that we may be living. But the reality is we've also seen a record-breaking year of shows last year. Latin had, specifically in Latin for Live Nation, they had some of the biggest tours that we've seen. We had stadiums go out and sold out. So there was a strong appetite, and we worked very closely with the artist camps and making sure that all those things can be executed safely as we've always done. You know, it's optimistic to see what we lived through last year. This year, we're already shaping up that we're going to have a record-breaking, company will have a record-breaking year in terms of shows. So I think part of the new normal is being nimble and flexible.
Mm-hmm. Now, with inflation going out of control, and it doesn't seem like it's going to subside anytime soon, do we see the possibility of ticket prices coming down? Is there going to be more flexibility on ticket pricing?
Is that going to me? Is that going to?
Yeah, Hans.
Look, I think ticket pricing is always a factor of working with artists and agents, as Michel very well knows. It's not a one-sided conversation. I think a lot of things are taken into consideration when we're doing the best for the fans and the artist. But I'd say that we, again, we're flexible and nimble to adapt to the situations to make sure we're super serving the artists that we're working with.
Michel, what kind of protocols do you have your artists on the when they're on the road now? With everybody's talking about the new variant, the BA2 being the new variant that's actually spreading all over Europe and eventually will make its way here. What kind of protocols you're working when it comes to your artists on the road with that?
We have we have what is called a bubble with our artists and crew. So every time, for instance, that we begin a new leg of a tour, everyone that's inside the bubble needs to be tested, have a recent test. And then we require all of the backstage work areas and the venues that we're going to also, provide, test results for those people that are going to come into contact with our folks on the road. We don't, we leave the protocols for front of house to basically venue managers because it can still vary from state to state and even municipality to municipality in the United States. So what we're the most concerned about and can have the most influence over really is what happens in the backstage areas where our people are working. So that's what we do. I've heard that others, handle it differently. We've adjusted also throughout the process as well. But currently that's what we have for the artists that we're involved with.
And you see the meet and greets coming back to what they used to be pre-pandemic?
Not anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get the same feeling, even though, as you well know, especially with the big name artists, the meet and greet ancillary business is, bigger than ever prior to the pandemic.
Well, most of them are thrilled that they don't have to do meet and greets anymore.
That's true. That is true. That is true too. You are extremely right about that. On spot. During the pandemic, everyone jumped on board the streaming concert bandwagon because there were no live shows, obviously. And that kind of slowed down, subsided, fizzled now. How does new technology, AI, VR, help keep streaming alive as an ancillary business? Gil, first.
Yeah, I mean, it's still something that you can use as a tool, Bruno. I think that, it may not, and then it never did really replace like people wanting to see live shows. But I do feel like, out of necessity and as the further we go and the better the technology is going to be, I think we're going to see some form of a real hybrid of seeing, having going to the live experience, but then also having, production where it's like it makes it worth going through, doing something like you said, an AI or virtual reality. I mean, I just think some of these companies that are already ensconced in that business are just really getting going. I mean, you're starting to see, you understand, like, the whole meta thing now. I'm starting to see the bigger picture of like where these companies are going with this. And so I think that you're going to see that. And, you're in lieu of the meet and greets in person, with Carla Morrison, we're doing the virtual ones. She's doing it, and it's, obviously health-wise, it's a lot safer. And, we're allotting, because we can do it, it's not necessarily done when things are pressure cooker, ready to go play. It's done in a separate fashion, like with dedicated time for 2 hours. She's going to meet 40 people and talk to them 5 minutes a piece, something like that. And and folks are willing to pay for that and get that extra merch bundle and whatever sent to them rather than having it in person. So I think the further we go, we're going to see much more of that being integrated. But I understand the question about, like, how some of that stuff fizzled during the live streams. I think just at that time, people were just so frustrated. And, but I think as, if ticket prices, continue to be where they're at, if they don't go back down, or if, you know, people, you know, inflation continues, maybe that live stream won't sound so bad to somebody.
That's true. Speaking of technology, and specifically Gil and Michel, because you guys work and manage artists, how real is the NFT business right now? Because everybody's talking about NFT like they're buying, you know, whatever you're buying, and the two things everybody's talking about is NFTs and buying song rights. But the NFT seems a little bit more nebulous. How real is it in our Latin business?
I mean, look, I think, you know, there's some people that have made some quick hits. If it's going to be something that stays around, it's very much in a nascent stage right now. No doubt, there's been, you know, some people that have done very well with some drops. No, I don't know whether it's going to be here to stay or whether it's going to be the, you know, 8-track of the future, or the beta max of the future. Who knows? I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah. And Gil, what about for your artists?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's still being looked at a little bit with a wary eye. We've had some companies come to some of our artists wanting to do the NFTs, and it sounds super enticing, but we've been a little bit reluctant, to be honest with you, especially with the artists that are perhaps on track with to get signed to a major label, because the major labels want that as well. And, you know, again, like, if, you know, how sometimes if certain labels, or if, you know, a artist does their publishing early on, then they're possibly less enticing to a major label. It's kind of the same scenario right now that I'm seeing, because we've been hit up with some nice offers, but I went and spoke to potential suitors for said artists, and they're like, "Oh, I wouldn't do that." It's like, we're wanting to get into that. So it's
also been a lot of fraud. I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely.
There's the Justin Bieber, you know, is a great example. I mean, there were these, you know, sites that popped up that you know, weren't the authentic site, and all of a sudden a lot of people lost a lot of money. So you got to tread very carefully as an artist in this area. Again, there's been people that have done it very successfully. I think you have to be super digital savvy to go into it. You know, it's not for everyone at the beginning until it gets somewhat standardized, you know. Some, you know, at some point, you know, if this prevails, then you'll have some, you know, some players that will sort of rise to the top, and they'll be known as the ones that really do things in a legitimate manner. But, you know, you just tread very carefully for the moment, I would say, the most.
Abram, if you don't mind, I'd like to just add to the conversation. Look, I think it's important to, like, sort of distinguish that there's a lot of things that are happening, and the conversation of NFTs is also a conversation about the underlying technology. And I think that the underlying technology is something that is here to stay. The application of it is right now sort of in flux. And I think that there's going to be a lot of things that will be successful, and most things that probably will not be successful. In the space, and specifically to, like, artists, I think that this is an opportunity to, again, expand, right, on how you connect with your acts. It's not looking at necessarily what are the things that have been done and what have worked and what haven't. It's how do you use these things to further engage your audience. And you know, some artists will be a little bit more tech savvy, and will want to engage on and try different things in the space. We're now having conversations where we give the option to collaborate with artists and help them develop within the NFT space or digital collectibles. Ticketmaster has launched also live stubs, which essentially is your digital ticket, right? So, you know, we've all been, 4 of us for sure, have been fans of collecting the physical tickets of the concerts that we've gone to. I have a ridiculous amount at home that I've kept over the years. And I think that we are by nature, we do like to collect things. You know, we have different areas in where we like to collect things. This is another way where we're giving fans a very easy access to the digital collectible space. They simply they don't actually have to do anything. They don't have to create a wallet. They don't have to move things anywhere. It's all integrated into your like Ticketmaster account, which makes it very easy and seamless. And for me, I think it's a good step that the company is taking to introduce, right, a digital collectible to somebody that you may not even be excited about until, you know, 4 weeks down, your group of friends all start talking about it and they have digital collectibles, and all of a sudden you're going to start looking for the one that you had. And you're given this, you know, with the purchase of your ticket. You do absolutely, it's no additional cost to the artist, no additional cost to the fan. I think it's a great way of sort of moving forward and staying ahead of the curve in providing sort of that value. So I would, you know, I'd highly recommend, obviously move carefully across that industry, but like, I think it's a creative outlet for artists to continue to look at and to think outside of the box of not just tying your music, but tying your content, your access to you, and to special things that you do, that we're all multi-layered, especially, you know, all artists are very multi-layered. It's not just a singular sort of song and focus of what people fall in love with. It's more than that. And so I think this gives an opportunity for those acts to touch and connect with their fan base in a very different way. I don't think we've seen all the ways yet. And for me, it's a very exciting space.
Hans, Live Nation bought Ocesa last year, making it the world's most powerful Latin concert promoter. Now, you guys have Live Nation Spain, you've got promoters in Chile, Puerto Rico, of course, and Argentina. Can you talk a little bit about the Live Nation Latin business model now that Ocesa is part of your family?
Yeah, look, I think it's important to distinguish that there is no standalone Latin division, right? The new normal is integration. Like what we've been seeing with the music is there isn't a differentiation. This is the mainstream. We are part of a much larger network. The music is operating in a much larger network. You know, Ocesa has been a long-term great partner with Live Nation. I think now that there is a more formal relationship between the two companies, I think it's just expanding and opening greater opportunities for both sides to provide for the acts and the artists that we work with. So, you know, I think you've seen it across the globe. The company is a global company that it's meant to super serve our artists on a global scale. And Latin has turned now global, and you know, the integration is just a seamless one, not just in Mexico, but in all other areas of the business. But certainly a very exciting, you know, formal relationship with Ocesa that I think will continue to grow more opportunities for the artists.
Do you see a point where Live Nation now offers global touring deals to Latin artists? Now that they have basically all of Latin America locked in, as well as the US and Spain?
Well, I mean, you know, Shakira has been with the company for quite some time now. You know, Rosalia will be embarking, is on a world tour with Live Nation. So yeah, I think there's already precedent there, and you'll continue to see that grow as Latin has become, you know, in my eyes, mainstream. And I think we all share that sentiment.
Michel, in the general market, the record labels are not really involved in the touring space. In the Latin one, they are. Universal has GTS, Warner has Getin, Sony has this partnership with Westwood. Why do you think they are involved in our Latin space and they're not in the general market?
Well, I think in general, you know, the Latin divisions of the majors have been in many ways, because of the nature of our Latin corner of the business, so to speak, have been more nimble than maybe their corporate parents. Um, and I think that this was kind of born out of necessity when, you know, when we had the crash, right? When we had the crash, and all of a sudden, you know, when you had the file sharing come up, and the death of physical, you know, that's when the labels had to reinvent themselves and figure out, you know, the additional revenue streams outside of their core business, right? And I think that the Latin labels had a taste of that even early on, because there was so much piracy, you know, before the streaming services came on the spot. So to a certain degree, they've needed to be more entrepreneurial. I think that would be the main difference between, you know, the Latin division of a major and its corporate, you know, its corporate parent. You know, and it's had varying degrees of success. I see them more as mini booking agencies more than anything else. You know, I don't. There was a time when, for instance, back in the day when Day One started with Sony, they tried to be promoters. You know, that didn't work. So what I've seen them do is more, you know, just basically, you know, try to exploit some of the 360 rights they have with the developing artists that they're signing, and then have an in-house capability to do that.
Got it. Gil, the brands obviously play such an important role in breaking and developing artists, because they have budgets. Sometimes it's a great association. How do you work with brands? How do you approach brands? The brand approach you? How does that marriage potentially work in your space?
Thanks for the question, Bruno. No, I think it's sort of like a give and take. It's, you know, we're always looking at, even when I'm signing an act, whether it's the management side or the label or both, you know, the music is always the first thing that I'm still old school that way, but probably 1B, if that's 1A, 1B is, how am I going to market this? How I'm going to be able to pivot whatever things that, you know, through the course of someone's career. Am I going to go this alone, or we're going to have people that I think could be potential partners? And so it's very important what we do. On anecdotally for us, you know, we try to work with everybody, and we try to be just very flexible and come in with an open mind and say, you know, not be like, you know, we want this, we want that, and that's it. It's like, what do you have to offer that makes sense for you guys as well as us? And, you know, and 9 times out of 10, it ends up being a yes. It's not ever, it's not always easy, but at the end of the day, I can't say that anytime that we were lucky enough to get a partnership, that it was a negative experience overall. It's, you know, sometimes it's hard to get to that peak, but once you're there, it's like everybody seems to be happy. And so we are aggressive about trying to get those brands, Bruno. And, you know, and we ask the artists also early on, what's your core values? And are there products that you use in your daily life, or, you know, whatever that may be, that are near and dear to you, that we can go and talk to? And that's how we've done it. We've done it with Carla Morrison. We've done it with Gabi Moreno. You know, I know with Gabi, I can't really talk to liquor because that's not something she's into. So it's just, you know, making sure that you don't go in with like an all size fits all approach. You know, you really need to like tailor it to like who your artist is, you know, because it's super important. Less and less artists are willing to just take the money just to take the money. They want something that's going to affect change for themselves and their audience.
And this is a question for the three of you. So baby acts are the future of our industry. How do we nurture, especially in Latin, how do we nurture these acts and get them from playing in front of an empty house, a bar, to maybe a theater and then eventually, hopefully, an arena run. How do we use our contacts, our strength, our connections to develop artists now, and make them viable touring artists? And I'd like Gil and Hans and Michel to answer this one, please.
I'll start off if that's okay, Bruno. I think, you know, the one thing that I am looking forward, hoping seeing something like OCESA and Live Nation join forces, is I would really love to see a little bit more of what's going on in the US for the baby acts happening in Latin America and in Mexico. You know, there isn't it's a very hodgepodge sort of network of small clubs, terrible clubs that, you know, are just, the reputations aren't the greatest. So it's really hard for an artist. I mean, a lot of bands still, their bread and butter is to be able to play. And that network that exists in the US doesn't really exist in those countries, not to where it's even semi-close to what we have in the States. And so what I'm hoping is that by the strengthening of OCESA and Live Nation, that they can go in and have those buyers like they have in the States that specialize in certain size venues and can, you know, really develop that and become a haven for the baby acts, as you say, to be able to play. I mean, that's still super important. You know, obviously the other things that you're seeing with like TikTok and all that, that's all super important. But how many acts have we seen that just had that as a foundation? Where are they now? So many of them. And so still to this day, that is still the bread and butter of a baby act, especially if you're doing live instrumentation. You got to be able to have a nice place to play, you know, and have that consistency, being able to have that network so that you can connect the dots.
Hans?
Yeah, I think, man, it's so layered, the response of all the things that need to happen for those acts to take those next steps, right? So, you know, outside of everything that you can do as an artist, I think first and foremost, you have to assume the responsibility of doing as much as you can with the tools that you have, right? We've democratized our access to fans and your ability to connect with them. That I think is the first and foremost of like, you need to be investing in that conversation, in that connection with your fans in a real way. And I think, you know, there's no secret to that. I think it's being, you know, who you are as an artist is going to be the best way to achieve those things. It's giving them access to who you are. That's the first and foremost. I think outside of that, in terms of what opportunities we try to look for is, you know, the taking those next steps is having other artists who are already on tour and creating those opportunities to open. I think that is such an invaluable piece for baby acts to make those jumps, to get in front of other acts. And sometimes it's not even baby acts, right? Like sometimes it's just acts that are seem very well established from social, from streams. But what, you know, I think to Gil's point is like going out and touring and going on the road and asking for a fan to pull out money out of their pocket is very different from them hitting play on any of the streaming platforms. So those connections and those jumps for either when you go out and you can open for someone is invaluable. We are strongly investing in, obviously we have, you know, an expansive network of like the House of Blues that was meant for that is meant for investing and developing those acts. We are very much, we have a team that's dedicated just to that, right? And keeping our eyes on ticket prices at that level, especially when you're going in for the first time. You know, proper marketing budgets that we're making sure you have the visibility that you have. Those things are all key fundamentals in an artist's understanding that you have to go out and do the math internally as you do externally for what the artist will charge, and trying to go for a volume. I think the conversation is not, we're never discussing enough the conversation about selling the most amount of tickets, right? Is the right ticket price is, I think, a fundamental conversation for the success of an artist, and going out and understanding that sometimes you have to open new markets, and you got to go into some of the places where you may not, no one is going to make the most amount of money necessarily, but it is important to think about steps along your career, and work it backwards. Where do you want to be? And then take 5 steps back, and then do that plan, and be successful at that plan before you go on and move on to the next.
And Michel, I remember I met you when I ran Maverick's Latin division, and you signed Nicole, our Chilean artist, and you did the most amazing job of actually getting her on the road in the US, and that was over 20 years ago. How do you see that process now of taking a baby act completely unknown and getting them to do shows in the US?
Well, first of all, you have to have a completely different strategy in the US versus other territories. Gil brought it up. I mean, we don't have the infrastructure in Latin America, at the small venue level that we do here. In Latin America, there are elements that are much more important that don't exist here. There is a better infrastructure for festivals, for instance, in Latin America. There's a ton more. Especially the local ones in secondary and tertiary markets, important to hit those festivals that they're not the sexy festivals, they're not the Lollapaloozas, but they're the ones that, you're going to be in front of 10,000 people, 15,000 people. And what better way to showcase than do that live? So, I would try to get as many festivals in Latin America. And television is actually still very important in Latin America. A lot of these festivals are televised. There's still a lot of programs, TV shows that have live performance slots on them, and they're a big tool in Latin America. It's a non-starter here unless you're on Fallon or but it's still very much a tool to an artist development tool in Latin America. In the U.S. It's a combination of, looking for that support slot if you can get it, and then following up quickly with a live show, a live headline show, and making sure that, it's okay to play a 300 capacity room as long as it's the right 300 cap room, because the idea is to sell 300 tickets, leave 25 people outside, and then come back on the next swing and do 800, and then come back on the next swing and do 1,500. That's how you build, and what I tell my artists that are in development also is, especially the younger artists now that have only grown up in a digital environment. Yes, you definitely want to build your followers. You want to, make sure you have a steady stream of content to keep the algorithm flowing and keep everyone coming to you. But your live career is a completely different animal, okay? And as Hans, very eloquently said, it is, to get somebody to pay for a ticket is a lot harder. It's a bigger value proposition than somebody just clicking a like or a follow, or or clicking on a song that they've already paid. Is embedded within their $10 a month subscription. To take some payday money and go see an artist is a real investment, right? And 9 times out of 10, you only see that artist once and you never see them again. What makes somebody go back and see the artist after they've seen them once? That artist has to connect with the people that are in the room. It's the most important thing. And you can't think digitally when you're in that moment as an artist. You have to be present. You have to look at the audience in their eyes. You have to be with them in that moment. And when you create that connection, when you know how to do that, you'll get them back the next time. And it's really almost counterintuitive, but the greats, the ones that are going to have great careers as live artists for decades to come, are the ones that understand that.
Yeah, absolutely spot on your commentary. Hans, last year Live Nation really kicked ass with the regional Mexican acts, especially here in the US. And I'd like to hear what your take is on the genre, because we keep hearing about Latin pop being reggaeton, urban, and everything else, but quietly, regional Mexican is still humongous, right? What do you have planned for this year and for next year? And what's your take on the regional Mexican, or whatever the genre is called now, going forward?
Yeah, look, I think there's it can't all be under one umbrella, because there are, you know, legacy acts that have been and continue to be strong and show, you know, massive numbers in their ticket sales and their ability to grow. What I find very interesting is these sort of new subgenres that are sort of popping up, that where the music is now really, you know, it's turned in the last 20 years. The commentary, the lyrics, what they're talking about, it's completely changed, right? And it's the influence of what has come growing up listening to that music and then making it their own. I think the biggest thing that we're looking at, and this is, you know, this is free to see, it's data out there, but to recognize, is that you know, that genre of regional urban or regional Mexican, or the, you know, all the legs that has, is the second fastest growing genre after urban music. I mean, it is absolutely in a growth pattern. You know, what I want to continue to see is those, a lot of those acts going in and playing the right rooms, going in and playing the places, you know, where the sports games, at the arenas. I mean, building really that fan base into true sort of concert experience, where you might see a lot of those things still happen in bailes or in convention centers, right? And it's been happening for years, and it just continues to move in that direction, right? Firme just now also taking the step and going into stadiums. More of the arenas and larger theaters with these newer acts sort of growing. It is an absolute area of investment for us. It was one of the biggest, you know, grossing genres for us last year. This year it's going to be very big as well. You know, it's going to be very big for the artists.
Excellent. So we only have time for two more questions. The first one goes to Gil, and then Michel, you get the last one. Gil, what music trends should we be paying attention to in the Latin space?
Yeah, I think that you know, during the pandemic, Bruno, I feel like you heard about like the record sales of instruments during the pandemic, and I think that those kids that learned how to play those instruments, I think that's going to come into fruition in the next couple of years, and I think you're going to see a little bit more of maybe perhaps you know, again, everything is sort of blending together. A bit more of a hybrid of the live instrumentation with the, you know, the electronic stuff that's here to stay. You're going to see a lot more, I think, females coming out in the Latin industry as far as artists are concerned. I think you're going to see them make a big impact these next couple of years, because, you know, they started out of necessity. I mean, if there ever was such a thing as Latin blues, as far as their life is concerned, beyond like just whatever country and economic situation they find themselves, emotionally, I think you're going to really hear some emotionally charged music. But, you know, you're already seeing like the, you know, it following, or not even following, in lockstep with general market, you know, sort of like the pop punk stuff that is starting to come back in a big way, whether we realize it or not. And I think that's going to be something that we're seeing in the next at least 2 to 3 years. We're going to be seeing that in a big way.
Oh, great. Michel, last question. You are the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this panel. Where do you see our Latin business?
You did
it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Nice way of saying I'm the old fart. I'd like to answer a different but related question, right? And if you ask me what I'm the most concerned about about our Latin touring business, I'd like to answer that one.
Mhm.
I think the biggest challenge that we face is ticketing fees. I think that we are beginning to forget who our customer is in this business. And, when you have somebody that wants to buy a ticket and they're excited and they say, oh, okay, $50. And they go to the basket and they go to buy it. And all of a sudden it's $69. That creates a bad taste from the beginning. I think that, we are maybe going to a place where the record business was in the in the end, the beginning of the 2000s, where the record business forgot who their customers were. They thought their customers were the record stores, but their customers were actually the actual people who were purchasing the records. And the minute another technology came along, there was no loyalty to the record companies because the customers had been shat on forever. And that's what we're doing to our customers, right? It's something that we're going to have to deal with sooner rather than later, or we're going to have a real issue. I have this discussion and I'm having it more and more. I did a survey recently of a number of the other artists that we have on tour, and there were some ticket prices that had up to 30% surcharge on them. And what's the most egregious about all this is the percentage of surcharge is higher on the lower price tickets. So the tickets where you would have the most price sensibility, people buying tickets in the lowest price point because that's the most they can afford, are the ones that are paying the highest uplift on the ticketing surcharges. So I think this is going to be a real issue that we have to tackle. I understand it's controversial. I understand there's people on both sides of this, but it's not healthy for our business in the long run, because ultimately it's not good for our customers, who are the ones that give us all the food that we put on the table and the ones that are actually going and paying for the tickets. So that's my soapbox. And I hope that we can deal with it. For instance, I'm going to do my part. When a promoter sends me an offer, I'm not only going to ask for the ticket scale, but I'm going to ask for transparency on the ticketing fees. Don't send me an offer. It says my highest price is $100 and my number 2 price is $75 and my number 3 is $50. My number 4 is $25, without also sending me exactly what the consumer is going to be paying on top of that. That's where we start the conversation as far as I'm concerned. Thanks.
Very, very valid point. And we saw it in the John Oliver's
Right.
show a couple of weeks ago. We're run out of time. Thank you so much. This has been very insightful. Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Hans. Thank you, Michel. I really appreciate it. It's always great seeing you guys as well. And I hope to see you soon on the road.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Michel, bye, Hans.
Well,
Thank
good to
you,
see
guys.
y'all.